Hey everybody, welcome to part 3 in a series of videos for Time Stories. Now in this video I want to emphasize this is going to be a playthrough video, so there are going to be tons of spoilers here. If you don't want the game spoiled for you at all, you don't want the mystery spoiled for you at all, do not watch this video because I'm going to be giving away a couple spoilers. Now to be fair, I'm not going to give away too many spoilers because I'm not going to play through the entire game. I'm just going to play through enough to go through a couple basic rooms just to give you an idea of how the game plays. So there's going to be probably 2 secrets I'm probably going to give away. But I'll try to keep the spoilers down to a minimum, and I'm going to go ahead and play through these cards. I'm going to play them as if the other players would, so you're not going to exactly see how the cards look, you're just going to basically see how the gameplay works. So again, much emphasis, lots of spoilers, but we're going to play through the Asylum case. Not going to spoil the Marcy case for you, this is going to be the Asylum case only. So let's take everything down to the board and start with Time Stories, the Asylum case. At the start of every scenario, we just simply need to start off by reading the base cards. And we're going to read these one after another, and basically what we're going to do is each player is going to grab one card and read it, just to make sure everybody's involved in the game. We just pick a card, that player will read it, and we'll keep on going down the line, getting story, getting history, and getting clues to exactly what we're dealing with. Eventually, one of the cards is going to explain to us what our statistics are for each one of our receptacles, what they mean, and it's also going to tell us exactly how many time units we're going to get based on however many receptacles we happen to be using for the scenario. It's going to tell us to set up the map, tell us exactly which room we're going to start in, it's going to tell us about the item cards to place them in play, and then finally it's going to tell us to select our receptacles, make sure we get the life tokens for each one of our receptacles, and then look at every one of the receptacle cards and see if any of them happen to have any special abilities that are going to allow them to get extra tokens for any specific purpose and what those tokens may be. For example, this receptacle right here starts off with 3 life, but he also has an addiction to cocaine. And before I go anywhere, yes, this game does have a very adult, mature theme to it. There is nudity, there is adult themes, there's cannibalism, there's lots of things along those lines. So the game is definitely much more for the adult, more like 13 years old, but I'll discuss that when I talk about my final review. But just to let you know, there are going to be some adult themes in the game. Just want to mention that now before I get further into the playthrough, because some of those aspects may pop out. So after we go through all these things, we figure out everything that all the players are going to need. We have the board set up, following the instructions on the base, following the subtle clues given to us by Bob. We're going to put all these cards off to the side, and this deck is going to be left off to the side like this in case we need to get any reminders about the special rules for a specific scenario. Not that important for the Asylum, but when we get to the Marcy case, some of those cards we may want to reference occasionally due to some of the rules in the Marcy case, but I'm not going to give away any spoilers because I don't want to ruin exactly what that is going to entail. So the base has instructed us that we're all going to go to the day room, so we need to go to the day room, lay out all the cards for the day room, and by now we've already figured out which one of the players is going to be the first time captain. The time captain is going to be the person responsible for reading the card, describing the room. They're also going to be the one responsible for rolling the time die when we start switching some of these rooms, and the time captain switches every time we move to another room. So this person starts off as the time captain. When we move to the next room, this person gets to be a time captain. We're just going to keep rotating, going clockwise, till we win the scenario, or we run out of time or fail due to some other circumstances. So now that we have the first room laid out, we're simply, as a time captain, going to grab the day room card, and we're going to read this card to all the other players, which is going to give them some subtle hints on exactly what they want to do. Now, since the day room is a room that every single person experiences when they play the game, I'm just going to go ahead and read this one. When we hit the other rooms, I'm not going to do that. So it says right here, you find yourself in the day room of an asylum. It's the end of the afternoon. The room is calm, with a gramophone filling the place with sweet music. The low sun illuminates all with an amber light. The first area we see right here is the nurse in charge of the hall stands near the door. Behind her, a man is very focused on his chessboard. In the background, enjoying the light of a large window, a young woman paints frantically. She throws you furtive, disturbed glances. Sitting in the corner of the room, a man gives you a slight wave. So we see that's everything that's going to be based on this room. Notice we didn't have descriptions for every single one of the panorama cards. We didn't actually have a description for this panorama card, but that's just part of the descriptions we may get from these locations. Now every single one of the players needs to pick up one of the pawns and figure out exactly which location, which one of these cards they want to visit. So we're going to decide that this person right here, he's going to go over and visit this location. This person is going to visit this location. This person is going to visit over here, and finally this person is going to visit over here. Now, of course, we use some logic about why these specific receptacles are picking these specific locations. I'll just go over them with you so you understand that there is some thought process to the game even right at the start of the game. You'll notice that this receptacle right here, he has the personality of a porcupine. Specifically, he has no ability to interact with other players at all. All these other players have at least a 1 and they're a skill at go ahead and talking to people, and the rest of them have a skill of 2 in their ability to talk to other people, which could be important because we need to roll the dice in case we ever have a test that requires us to talk to people. He has no ability in talking to people, so let's send him over to the picture frame because hopefully the picture frame doesn't decide to talk back to him. We have this location right over here. We see that this guy is okay at talking to people. He has a level 2. And we know that there may be somebody over here to talk to because he's sitting on a couch, so possibly somebody we need to interact with. We see that there's somebody here painting a picture. We don't know what the picture is because we haven't gone over there yet. So this receptacle is going to go over there because she's good at talking and she's good at combat and she's good at dexterity. So whatever happens to be over there, maybe she's going to ask us to help paint a picture, but whatever. But we have pretty balanced stats and all those abilities, so she's a good choice to put over here. And find this guy right over here on the day room. While she isn't that great of a talker, we really don't need to worry about too much because he's got a gramophone in his ear, so he's probably not going to hear what we have to say anyways. So it's probably a good decision putting all these receptacles at those locations in that way. Now every single one of our players is going to pick up the card based on whichever location the receptacle decided to choose. And again, remember, we're going to look at the cards and we're going to do exactly what the cards say. Read them over, look at them, see if there's any clues, any hints, or anything that happens to be on that card. And they tell us to take an item, like this card tells us to do. We're going to go ahead and take that item and do what that item tells us to do. The very important thing here, though, is we're not going to show the other players exactly what this card is. We're free to discuss what happened with this card. We're free to show them how this card worked and what happened with this card. But if there's no text on this card that's in a square box, we are not allowed to read any of that card at all, unless there's text in a square box, because those are usually rules. And we are allowed to read the square box verbatim to other players, but anything else we kind of have to discuss, which is why it's kind of important to be able to pick up on subtle clues and pick up on subtle things. So this card right here is going to tell us to grab an item, and now I'm not going to grab that item because I know what it is, and again, I don't want to give away any spoilers, but that card does tell us to grab an item and go ahead and do something with that item. The next card we're going to have is this card right here, and again, remember, all these players are looking at all these cards at the exact same time, and we still have not spent a time unit yet. So this player is going to look at this card, and this card is going to tell them to take an item. Now in this case, I'm going to go ahead and grab that item just so you can see how that works. It's going to tell us to take item number 24. So we're going to fan through the items. Again, we're not going to look at the fronts of these cards because we don't want any spoilers. And the numbers on these cards are always in big numbers on the back of the cards. So we just need to fan through until we get the right item number, and it was item number 24. So we're simply going to grab item number 24, making sure we don't look at any of the other cards, and then we're going to go ahead and read this key or read this item, and we're going to get something. In this case, we're going to end up getting a key. Now this key is going to have a little bit of text on it, and it's going to have an item number on it. This is very, very important because sometime in the future, one of the locations is going to say if you have the key number 24, you can use it to access something. So since this player went to this location, this is the player who's going to get the key. So the cocaine addict is going to end up getting that key, so we're going to add that to that player. Now we pass the cards back and forth to each other in between locations, or if we ever happen to be at the same location, we exchange cards. But otherwise, all these cards are going to remain on those specific players specifically, unless they decide to exchange them with the other players. Now this player is going to look at this card right here, and there's going to be some text on it. There's going to be some clues on these cards. So again, this player needs to look at this, look at all the details, try to figure out if there's any clues they're seeing, and then they're going to place this card back down, and they're going to discuss with the other players and saying something along the lines of, I found a girl there, she was painting a picture, there were some strange symbols on the picture, and she was drawing a picture of something. Then the other players can ask me some further questions where I may go into further detail, saying something like, well, she was drawing a picture of a manticore. And I might even relay if I saw some symbols on the card or anything like that, but this is where it's going to rely on my power of memory, because I need to, technically, I need to remember exactly what I saw on that card, because I can't just hold the card up like this and just keep saying, well, there's this, there's this, there's this on the card. I need to look at the card, place the card back down, and explain to my fellow players exactly what I've encountered, what I've experienced, and exactly what I have seen. Notice at this point, though, nobody's managed to spend any of our time units yet because we haven't done anything that requires the expenditure of a time unit. Simply looking at cards does not expend time units. The only thing that expends time units is a skill test, moving to a different location, or deciding to do nothing on your turn. So none of our players have experienced anything that requires a skill test, so nobody spent a time unit. Nobody has decided to move to this last location where they happen to have somebody that they can interact with. So again, no time unit spent. And again, nobody has decided to do absolutely nothing for the expenditure of the time unit. So now the players as a group need to make a decision. They can, if they like, spend one time unit and have one some, or all of them move over to this location to go ahead and explore this card. Or they could have even some move over here because they didn't think this person gave away enough clues, or thinks there may be something more to that card right there, especially with a painting with lots of details. So more players may want to move there because more people can have a better chance of picking up on some details. But whatever they decide to do, if anybody decides to move to a different location, they have to spend at least one time unit. Now, if anybody decides to do a skill test, whether they're mandatory or it's an optional skill test, again, that's going to require the one expenditure of the time unit. So if anybody wants to spend a time unit for any reason, whether it's to move or to do a skill test, the whole group needs to decide to spend the time unit as a group. And if they do, then everybody gets to do one of the actions of skill test, moving, or absolutely doing nothing. Now, if everybody decides that they don't want to move this location and nobody has a skill test they want to perform, all the players as a group need to decide if they want to move to a new location, exactly where they want to move to. So we have the options. If we start in the day room, we can move to the dormitory, the promenade, we can move to the kitchen, or we can move to the infirmary. So as a group, we're going to decide that we're going to go ahead and we're going to head to the kitchen, because we're going to decide to see if there's any special clues over in the kitchen and see if there's anything interesting for us to do over there. So the first thing we need to do as a time captain is we need to roll the die and figure out how many time units it's going to cost us to move over to the kitchen. Now we rolled 2, so that means we're going to spend two time units, going down from 25 down to 23 time units. Now we just need to clear out the board, take all these cards and move them off to the side, putting them on the bottom of the stack there. Then we need to go through the stack and we need to find the card for the kitchen. And then we're going to put the kitchen down and lay it out. And again, we now have a new time captain. This player is now the time captain, and they're going to be in charge of reading the first card for the kitchen. And they're also going to be responsible for controlling the time die when we go to the next location, when we leave the kitchen. So this player will be responsible for reading this card, and then we just need to set out the other cards, forming the panorama, giving the players an idea of exactly what they're dealing with. And we're noticing that we have a little bit of a smaller panorama here. We have only 3 panoramas. We do have 4 receptacles to explore. So now the new time captain gets to read the card. It says here, after having wandered for some time in the corridors, you reach a room next to an empty refectory. The kitchen, a rather unpleasant cabbagery smell fills this room, edged with work areas that are covered in pots, pans, and other cookware. To the left, a man in his 50s turns to you and begins to smile if he sees your group. By the back wall, 2 men are washing dishes and pay you no attention. In the far corner, a man and a woman talk to one another in a low voice. So the time captain reads that card. Then all the players need to decide exactly which one of these locations they want to go to and decide to interact with that location some special way. So now we know that he is horrible at talking to people, so he's probably going to be the last person to decide where we want to go to do some interacting with some NPCs in this adventure. So we're going to start picking. Probably the smart thing to do is to pick our guys who are the best talkers, which would be the orange and the pink, and they're probably going to decide that these people are talking, so they may be hiding something from us here. These 2 people appear to be talking, so maybe they're hiding something, or maybe something we can explore. And Mr. I don't talk so well and the grumpy old lady are going to decide that they're going to go visit the cook and see what they can learn. Now, the important thing to realize here is, again, we have not spent any extra time units by moving to these locations. We only spent the 2 time units that cost us to move from the day room to move into the kitchen. So starting with the players, each player is going to reveal the card at their specific receptacle's location. They're going to read that specific card and do exactly what that card says to do. Now in this case, this card is going to give this player a little bit of information, and they're going to take that information, they're going to share it with the group. Again, we're not going to read the card. We're simply going to explain what has happened by our interactions with the card. And then this player is going to run into a card that's going to give them a skill test. And they're going to tell the rest of the group that there is a skill test, and it's going to be in a box. And they're going to read that text out to the other players, letting the other players know what's going to happen. And I'll put that card down just for one moment. And then this group of 2 players is going to be over this location. They're also going to explain to the rest of the group that they also have a skill test, and that there's something that's going on at this location. If they want to do the skill test, they need to pass a check. So these 2 players decide that they do have a skill test. This player decides they have a skill test, and this player decides they have nothing to do. So the players as a group decide that they are going to spend a time unit to go ahead and do these skill tests. So we're going to spend 1 time unit, going down from 23 to 22. Now again, this person is not causing any other time unit expenditure. It's these 2 players wanting to do the skill test. 1 time unit for each person to get an attempt of 1 action. The 3 actions are do nothing, move, or perform a skill test. And again, these players are deciding that they are going to do a skill test. Now the requirements for each one of the skill tests is going to be listed on each one of the cards. This player has to do a skill test where he has to pass a dexterity check. And we look at our dexterity check for her is it's going to be 2 dice, because we look at the green symbol, it's got the matching symbol for the skill test here. So we know we get to roll 2 dice to try to beat a challenge. And this is going to tell us that we get to roll 1 dexterity test. We only have 1 attempt at this at all. And if we get 2 stars, whether that's on 1 die or a combination of both the dice, we're going to succeed. If we don't, we're going to fail the skill test. So we're going to roll, we're going to get 1 star, so we are going to fail the skill test, and something's going to happen because we failed that skill test. Again, I don't want to do any spoilers, so I'm not going to spoil that for you. And then this next location we see right here is actually a skill test where we have to defeat a certain challenge that's going to have 4 gray shields and no other shields on the test, but it's a test of conversation where we need to do a conversation test and try to talk our way into or out of a situation. The only unfortunate thing is this guy is a horrible talker, so he's not going to be able to help on the skill test at all. So we know this is a talking test, and we have 2 ways of getting through this test. We can either do something with something we possess, again, avoiding spoilers, or we can just try to talk our way out of the circumstances directly. So we're going to try to talk our way out of the circumstances directly, and we know that she is an absolute wonderful talker who only gets to roll 1 die, and she needs to get through 4 shields to try to beat this talking test. So luckily we do get multiple chances of that, but every time we roll, we're going to be ending up spending a time unit. So we're going to roll the die, we're going to get a skull so we don't knock out any of the shields at all. Now this person, for the expenditure of the time unit, hasn't done anything yet. They don't have a skill test they want to do, so they're going to decide to spend that time unit in moving over. This person can't move because they spent the time unit itself just by making a skill test, so their access to that 1 time unit is already gone by, so they can't do anything. So that's the end of it for all of our players for that 1 time unit expenditure. Now the players as a group can decide that they really, really want this item really, really badly, whatever it is, and they can decide to spend another time unit, and then these players get to roll. This player can decide to join them in case there's a failure, but they can't actually help on this time unit expenditure. Or they can decide that they don't really want whatever's underneath that card and decide they want to move to another location, which will require the rolling of the time die. Well, the players decide that they're going to go ahead and do a skill test because they want to see what that player is hiding from them. So now, since the players decide that they do want to do another skill test, that does mean they need to do an expenditure of a time unit. Remember, we started with 25 time units. It took us 2 to move to this room, into the kitchen. We spent 1 for the prior skill test for these 2 different locations. Now we're spending another time unit for an additional skill test. Now these players in any order can make an attempt at the skill test. We already know that this player right here isn't very talkative, so he isn't going to be able to help with the skill test at all. So it's basically going to be up to these 2 players to figure out which one of them wants to go first and who they think can succeed better with the odds. So we're going to look at however much they have their ability to talk, and we're going to see that the pink player does have the ability to talk, and he also has access to an item, which will help him with the skill test also, but again, I'm trying to avoid spoilers, so we're not going to get into that just yet. So what he's going to do is he's going to decide to make a skill test. He's going to roll the 2 dice, and we're going to get 3 stars. So that does mean we're going to remove 3 of the shields, and since this was a 4 shield test, that does leave us 1 shield left over. So that's his action for the expenditure of the time unit. And now she gets to roll 1 die for her attempt to try to convince this person to help us. We'll roll the die. We will get 1 star, which is enough to get rid of the final shield, which means we have managed to pass that skill test. So we're going to look at the card again to remind us exactly what item we're going to gain, and we're going to gain that item. Now, since she is technically the one to beat the test, she's the one who's going to get the reward. So we're going to look for item number 12, which is the reward for completing the skill challenge. And we're going to see that she managed to get 2 slabs of meat. Now we got to wonder exactly what those 2 slabs of meat are for, but they do have a nice bonus that if we look at the bottom, they can be used for an additional effect, so that may be helpful for us. So now we have to make a decision. This player has not done anything at all for this expenditure of the time unit. Now he could technically go over here for his expenditure of the time unit and see what that is, and this person could have also done that also, but what was described by the other players makes that these guys realize there's not really much reason to do that. So the only thing left to do for our players is decide that they're going to move on to another room. So the current time captain gets to roll the time die. We're going to spend 2 time units after, of course, deciding exactly what room we're going to go to. And let's say we decide that we wanted to go to the dormitory. So we're going to go to the dormitory. It's going to cost us 2 units, bring us from 21 down to 19. And then our players are simply going to clean up the board, remove this location from the board, and then they're going to go through all the location cards, find the dormitory location, place it out on the board, And then we're going to go ahead and interact with those locations and figure out exactly what we want to do, which locations we want our receptacles to visit, and we're going to interact with those locations and find out what kind of results we're going to gain by going to those specific locations. Now, the dormitory is a really good example to show you, to explain a little bit further on how the game works using the game's mechanics, because we're going to see two rooms over here that have these little symbols from these tokens on it. And basically this means that we cannot go to those locations until something has given us those symbols, and we may have gained those by going to different locations. We may gain those symbols by actually exploring these locations, but until we have been given the go-ahead to access these locations by having those specific symbols, whether we have them on our board from finding them in other locations, or because one of these cards are going to tell us to reveal that specific symboled card, either way we cannot go to that location. So the time captain, which is the time captain right here, because we're going to keep rotating, starts with the top of the card, and they're going to read the card to the rest of the players. After walking a few minutes down in Asylum's corridors, you enter the dormitory. It's a large room bordered by 2 rows of beds. At this time of day, only a few beds are occupied by apathetic patients who, between few senseless mumbles, let out discreet snores. To the left, a patient calls you from his bed. At the back of the room, lockers hold the personal belongings of the patients. To the right, through the windows, you glimpse the large park on the east side of the building. A closer look might allow you to better scope out the surrounding area. So now all of our players need to put the receptacles out on locations and figure out exactly what they want to do. Well, we know that Mr. Talkative over here isn't really good at talking to people. So knowing that he's not good at talking to people, probably a bad idea to send him over here to the patient who's currently in the bed, who may or may not have any information for us. So this player decides to send that receptacle. He's going to go explore that part of the certain location that we happen to be in. So we know that she's also not good at talking to people, so she says, I'm not good at talking, so I'm going to go over here and explore the window and see what we can see out by looking out the windows. And both these people, both of them very good at talking, decide that, hey, we're going to go over here and see if this guy has anything important to tell us. Of course, don't forget, we haven't spent the time units until we actually interact with these locations and require us to do skill tests or anything like that. So we are still at 19 time units, and again, all of our players are going to look at their specific cards based on whichever location the receptacle is at. And those players get to look at the cards, interact with those cards, and figure out exactly what they want to do, whether it's expending time units, gaining items, or decide this may have been a bad location to go to and continue to move on to other locations. I think you've seen enough gameplay for Time Stories now to figure out this is going to be the type of game for you and your gaming group. I don't want to go any further now beyond this point, because I am at the point where I'm going to start reviewing lots of spoilers and start opening a lot of things and start giving away some hints to exactly what's going on in this Asylum. So before we go any further, I'm going to stop the game right here. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them in the YouTube comments down below. You can also feel free to email me at offtheshelfboardgamereviews. That's otsbgr@gmail.com. If you enjoyed this video, you want to see more like it, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and stay tuned for my full review of Time Stories. May go into further detail, saying something like, well, she was drawing a picture of a manticore